New speakers in a multilingual Europe is going to be the topic of her talk today, and how to transmit the Basque language between generations.
It is a real pleasure, a privilege really to be here in this event. So for Colin, Professor Colin Williams, and I thank the organizer for asking me to be here. And how does this work? How do I get out of this one? Oh, okay, there it is, yeah. Okay, so this is, Jeremy asked me to talk about Basque intergenerational transmission of Basque, but I'm going to try to propose a new theoretical framework that could be more useful for policy making and society in general in the minority languages context. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to look at the transmission model that we have had traditionally in the Basque country, and look at the language socialization paradigm to see which one will be more useful and reflects better what really happens in minority language context. And I'm going to do this by asking who are agents in language transmission, or as we sometimes refer to intergenerational continuity of the minority language. So I'm going to have a look at parents, of course, and the school, but I'm going to look at other agents who are very important, but very often are invisible. My argument will be that we need to have a framework that really reflects what really goes on, not only because of sociolinguistic justice, to actually make visible some agents like parents who are not speakers of the language, for instance, but also because we really need to include them all in policy making. Okay, so the transmission model, this goes like this because chronologically has happened, but I'm going to start here. So I'm following Paula Casares. Paula Casares from the University of Navarre, but also working in policy making at the Navarrese government. And she was the first person, I believe, that applied the language socialization paradigm coming from anthropology by Eleanor Ott and Bambi Schifferling to minority languages context, because she found that the transmission model, and I'm going to describe briefly that model and the other one, really didn't really explain what was going on in the transmission of Basque in Navarre, but also we have been able to apply that to other contexts in Basque country. So the transmission model, and I'm going to kind of give you headlines because we don't have time to go into the nitty-gritty, but I think it will be enough. So basically, it does base, and this transmission idea or notion means that parent-child transmission, and the domain is the family. So it's vertical and unidirectional, and there is an idea behind, which is that parents transfer the language, which is then reproduced by children. This, to me, means a particular positioning of parents and children that I would like to challenge. So in this model, just parental agency is taken into account, and for instance, children's agency is not. And another thing is that it's mother tongue based, so it's very much based on language acquisition models based on L1 acquisition from early childhood in the family. This means that parents' linguistic competence is really central, and that leaves out parents with lower competence and parents who are not the speakers of the language. However, they do have something to say and a great impact in what goes on. So in Basque sociolinguistics, of course, and because the number of ideal transmitters of the language was low 50 years ago, of course, from the beginning, the importance of a school and getting the language of a school was there. So we have this distinction between natural, primary, informal in the family transmission, and cultural transmission, which is secondary, formal at a school. But still, the model is the same. It's adults transmitting the language to children at the school. Okay? Limitations of these models for minority language revitalization, certainly for Basque, but for Welsh and other languages. Well, if we were to only focus our attention on this, there's no hope for language with low numbers of such ideal language transmitters. But in fact, intergenerational continuity of minority languages does happen, and Basque or Welsh is a good example of it. So how is it possible? Yeah, so perhaps we should be looking at the whole thing as an ecosystem of different agents and factors that are totally interrelated. So the model also doesn't take into account the changes that the revitalization efforts bring about. For instance, new speaker profiles include the new speakers, more linguistically diverse families, involving linguistic ideologies, and these two need to be incorporated, we think. So how does the language socialization paradigm help us? It is a much more holistic view. And key to the model is the idea of multidirectionality and multi-agency. Multidirectionality means that it's not just vertical, top-down impact, but also bottom-up, children among words, and also a peer impact. And multi-agency, there are many more agents that have an impact and really help with the socialization of children when they acquire the minority language. So we need to look at, beyond school and family, and look at the interrelated roles of family, school, and the community. I'm going to talk about the community because also Jeremy wanted me to specifically to look at this, but also I believe in it. The community in general. Let's try to then unpick this, but for the moment, stay with that. And then this is important, including children as agents. And then the concept would be not that transfer, but participation. Children have agency as minority languages. We know that very often they are in families that are Welsh-speaking or Basque-speaking or Catalan-speaking. They are the ones that bring the Spanish language into the home. So we know that they have agency. They actually read the social rules, sociolinguistic norms in society, and they bring them with them. But can we look at them from the other point of view of agents in favor of the minority language? How do we need to look at them? Let's talk about that. Parents who don't speak the minority language are included because they are agents. Without them, we cannot do it. And the Basque revitalization process knows this because of how many parents send their children, for instance, to Basque medium school. So this idea of spreading the notion of who is an agent is important. Another thing that I think is key to minority languages is that socialization is a lifespan process with its ups and downs. And here, so it's not just what you get in early childhood, but also is how your socialization in the minority language happens along your life. And this is important for newcomers to the language, for young people who keep learning, and we need to incorporate this into our theoretical framework, theoretical and practical framework for policy making. Okay, so learning and socialization in the minority language beyond school. Right. Another thing that I think is important is this interplay of the context and the macro. And so because things happen in a given socio-historical context. So we need to have a look at what goes on in that particular context, in the Welsh context, but it's not the same Cardiff than the North, and the same in other areas. But also at the same time, this context, things happen in this context, but they happen at the micro level. It's in interaction that social norms are perpetuated or challenged, and also where things happen at the level of interaction. So this is what we need to have a look at. So this is the framework I propose, and in order to actually see how to apply it, let's look at the Basque case, for instance, and see, by answering the questions, who are agents, let's see what we learn from it. So the first one, I'm going to go very quickly because we know that parents are agents. I'm not saying they are not. And in Basque, we have seen that it was important that family transmission was consolidated, and that has happened. And here you have that 85% when both parents are Basque speakers do transmit the language. This is even higher when both parents are L1 speakers, native speakers of Basque. But okay, we know that this is good news for us, but I would like just to say two things about parents, and is that this is happening also when one parent only is a Basque speaker, OPOL, one parent, one language. But the important thing is that without the support and the support of that parent, this wouldn't happen. So that parent has agent. The other thing that's an important development is that new speakers are also transmitting their language. A language that it was not their first language, they are also transmitting it. We have started getting this data from 2016, and we are seeing important developments here. And there is a lot of mixed language transmission that some people may say this is a threat. I personally see right now it's good news because it means Basque too. Okay, so that's about parents, but they are much more than transmitters. Why? Because of the choice of school, for instance, they do. Right now, 95% of students in pre-primary to secondary are enrolled in Basque medium school or bilingual schools. That wouldn't happen without parents who are non-speakers, which are more than half of parents. Remember that in the Basque country, this is parental choice, that the choice of schools. Transmission of positive attitudes, that's an important way in which we have seen that parental agency is absolutely crucial, and here it doesn't matter whether you are a speaker of the language or not. And finally, the myriad of strategies that parents put in practice in order to support the language, like extracurricular activities, which language to do football in, okay, or music or whatever, and also the consumption of cultural products, books, etc. So as you can see, even parents who are the traditional transmitters can be looked at in a different light. The second one, of course, is the school, and I'm going to say very little about it. Of course, a school has been a great transmitter of the language in the Basque country, but I would like to say the potentiality it has to become a referent for the community. Sometimes it's the safest space, it's the place with Basque or Welsh or Irish activity crystallizes. And we have seen, especially in Spanish, highly Spanish-speaking context, how the school and parents organizing themselves for outings, etc., has been absolutely crucial. And parents who are speakers socializing children of Spanish-speaking families, children, in a kind of the shared responsibility about all this. Right, children as socializing agents. I think this is very important. As you can see, I have white hairs, and in some of my conclusions, I thought quite a lot about this talk. I think the way we have placed children in our educational system at school as passive transmitter is actually not very helpful. If we really looked at them as participants and they actually understood what is going on, we would be better off, I think, because they do have agency and they have the ability to understand and be part of it. Okay, so their agency would be bottom up in the family and in relation with adults, but also horizontal in relation to other children. So how have we seen this? And this is the work of Paula Casares, although we have actually done some work with her with new speakers. Well, children are very often the ones who introduce the Basque language in Spanish-speaking families, through books, through songs, through the words. Very often, they are the motivators for parents to learn the language, and we have seen that in a research that we did on attitudes to Basque of adults who didn't speak the language. Great motivation. And as the studies on Muda processes have shown, many parents, it's a trigger for a Muda. Parents who may know the language, they decide to actually make Basque the language of communication because of their children. So that's an important role that children have. You would say, well, it's kind of passive, all right, but children are often gatekeepers. So we listen to come on speaking Basque, and then parents are speaking in Spanish, and the child says, Basque, please, you are not talking in Basque. So we have seen that as well. And very important, children as socialization agents for other children. How are we doing? Yeah, okay. So this is an example, very, very quickly, but it's so nice to see examples. This is a mother who doesn't speak the language, and the father does, but she tries to say something now and then, and the child says, very good, ma'am, very good, 48 points. And she gives me points. She gives me points. And then she turns to her dad, who is, but dad, you only have 18 points. And then so she's actually campaigning on that. So we have examples of this that show us, I'm not saying that this is mainstream, it shows us what children can do and in which ways, if we acknowledge that they are agents, in which way we could perhaps do things slightly different, yeah? This is children who are socializing other children. This is Paula Casares' data. So this is a child they are playing dice. Okay, so he says in Spanish, que me toque dos, repito, and now I throw again. Let it be two, let it be a two. And the children around, they say, tocatse a mí, they're, let it be two in Basque. So the child, the next one, the child who's throwing the dice, say, tocatse a mí, let it be a two, okay? So there are examples of this in Basque-speaking communities as well. So I'm not going to stop here, but many of the things that Colin said, but also my colleagues before, really resonated with me. And it's not just about competence. Perhaps we have actually, I must say, put our foot in it because we need competence, but competence is not enough. We don't really want, speakers who can speak the language. We really want them to use the language and be part. Okay, so we have seen that, I'm just going to mention the transforming social norms, because children, but adults and newcomers as well, they learn the language, but in the interaction, they also learn the sociolinguistic norms in place. And in a place like Bilbao, for instance, sociolinguistic norms favors the use of Spanish among the young. Okay, so we need to be aware of that. It's not enough to be able to speak the language. So how do we do about it? We need to incorporate language ideologies and the prevailing sociolinguistic order into our framework as well. Okay, so we need to concentrate much more on transforming subjectivity, especially with new speakers, but also transforming social norms. Otherwise, things will not happen. And this is, talking about socialization as a dynamic and lifespan process really helps us because we can see that adolescents and young people may learn the language, they don't use it, and they come back. We need to incorporate all kinds of profiles, okay? So, and just to the last point is the community. I put it in inverted commas because there are lots of things. The community is all around this very specific domain. So the family and a school is what happens in the street, but also what policy we have, okay? And I think that policy strategies, both bottom-up and top-down, because there is a lot of activism in Basque society as there is in Welsh society, very situated in the context, they have an impact as well. They have an impact on then people who are agents. And then the shared norms of language practices enacted have an impact as well, so we need to intervene on that. Okay, so this is obvious. Cultural products, to have actually cultural products in Basque cinema, theaters, stories is essential in order to help with this socialization of children, so they have inputs and experiences in Basque or the minority language from different parts, especially, and in leisure as well, cultural aspects, and leisure, emotional, Jeremy talked about emotions, social, etc., and language campaigns as well. And with language campaigns, well, let me go do this one first, and that would be the last, the community element. Before I go to sort of campaigns and things that are organized, I wanted to see also community, the kind of strategies that have happened at community level in the Basque Country, but also new ones that are emerging right now. And I think this is promising because we really need to look in a different way on how we label speakers and what kind of practices we legitimize and which ones we don't. So the socialization of children, I would say, partly because the Basque project, in a sense, has been, Jackie Urla says this, really very much bottom-up and grassroots, but then with the planets aligning themselves with Basque government and administration, top-down policies as well. Yeah. So we have seen that very often the community raises children. Spanish-speaking families find that their children are raised by the community. I don't have time to talk about Eunata's case, but yeah, it's a child that came into this area and she said, you know, I'm a native speaker. My parents don't speak Basque, but I'm a native speaker because, you know, the community raised her. And there is a well-rooted social norm in the Basque Country, which is to children only in Basque, certainly in areas where Basque has a high presence. But we have started to see that in mixed areas and highly Spanish-speaking areas, there is an emerging and spoken rule or norm towards that as well. Many people, even if they don't have great proficiency with children, they would speak in Basque, okay? This is important because it's not, of course, if I find a child in the fruit shop and say, what's your name and how are you? That's not going to do a lot for, you know, their competence. But is what I'm signaling that child in terms of the presence of Basque in society, okay? There are other initiatives that I find that they are very healthy. And what I like about them is that there are campaigns about some of them, but it's very much part of discourse. Again, I'm not saying that this is mainstream, it happens everywhere and we have no problems. I'm saying that these kinds of initiatives is something that perhaps we should focus on and they can give us ideas. One thing is first word in Basque, because the likelihood that a person, certainly if they are children or young people, that they will speak Basque is high, you know. So it doesn't take a lot, but first word in Basque. Another one which I think is very important and is the passive speaker as a legitimized interlocutor. Before, and this is important because in Basque, like in Welsh, you know, 10 people speak in the minority language, 1 doesn't, and everybody speaks in Spanish or in English. But if you have a passive speaker, that person is very important. And if that person wants to be part of this, the agency that person displays makes a huge difference because the language of communication will be in Basque. Even if then that person speaks in Spanish, then, you know, so we have that. And I think this is very healthy above or beyond prescriptive attitudes towards purism and this and the other. In the same line, well, addressing them in Basque, of course, but bilingual conversations we are seeing, and Colin mentioned Euskaraldia, to briefly mention it now, but bilingual conversation, legitimizing bilingual conversations as a way to include Basque too. And for learners, this is important because with practice you will become a better speaker. And so it doesn't matter if I sort of start in Spanish, then in Basque, then I go back, the other person will continue speaking in Basque to me. So I think those elements are very important. And that happened at the interactional level, which is great. So I'm not going back to thing, and I'm going to mention campaigns. And I think this will be my last thing before I just say 2 things for the conclusion. So there have been a number of campaigns in the Basque case, and we have here colleagues from the language policy, including the main secretary, that have been useful. But to me, what is important is that when these campaigns really tap on what already is being discussed and reflected on by society, and when they tap on an issue that at the moment is important. Okay, to me, campaigns that come from nowhere don't have any impact, but yes, when they they actually give answer, because there is kind of a loudspeaker of this. It's the massive impact that they can have. And here, a little is a lot, Pizca bat es mucho. It was a campaign to actually legitimize people who didn't speak very much, but come on, speak what you can. You are doing really well. This is good. You're a new speaker. It doesn't matter. It was, Anol was with this song, really, Buen Rollo, really good. For instance, this one, aurrean el duok heldu, okay, to children always in Basque, but then children see that the parents talk in Spanish between themselves. So this campaign was, have you thought that if you're speaking Spanish, what are you signaling to your child? And this involved in this campaign, children talking about this and the other. So it's something that has a real impact, because we need social pedagogy as well. You know, we people, even if we are very activists, we need to know that that is important. And this is Euskaraldia, which Colin mentioned, and this has been going on now for only 2 or 3 editions, and that is because our habit is often in highly Spanish-speaking areas to speak Spanish. And I would say because social norms, especially amongst the young, favor that. It's actually why cool to speak the Spanish, and Basque is the language of the school, yeah? So in order to actually, let's neutralize for a minute, for 11 days in fact, all those things, and then for 11 days is time for Basque. So then you can signal through a pin that you can use the language, or that you are prepared to be spoken to, and for 11 days with really, you know, positive attitudes, you are doing great, you know, nothing like judging how you do things. That was a great success as well. Why? Because it forces us to get out of our comfort zone and to try new things. And because it's community, because it's social, because it actually means that involves everybody, they are successful. So this is the end from me. I just, as a conclusion, I think we need I think the transmission model is too limited for us. I think we need a model that is holistic, that looks at everything, that looks at, to me, the idea of from ecology, like you have a micro, you have I can't think of the word now. You know, that all agents, that all elements are interrelated. I think it's very important. We need all agents to take into account all agents. As I said, not only because of sociolinguistic justice, which I think is important, with parents who are not the speakers, etc., but because we need them all. And also because policy making needs to actually have this ecosystem. That's the word I couldn't think of. It needs to have an overall idea of an ecosystem. Bottom-up and top-down policies working together is very important, and I think we have learned this in the Basque Country. And then I think the language socialization paradigm gives us a theoretical framework that has direct application at practical level, and that can be applied and to any circumstances. You know, for instance, in the Basque Country, different sociolinguistic context, but then in the Welsh case or in the Irish case, you know, it will be different. It doesn't matter. That's the idea. That's the flexibility of it. I thank you. I know that we all ran late a bit more. So thank you. Leon.